Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tinkerverse. So today we're going to take a look at a machine from AlgoLaser, the Alpha Mk2. Algo reached out to me recently and asked if I'd be willing to take a look at this machine. And I was just off of a couple of other similar machine reviews and I was not sure. But after digging into the machine a little bit online and doing a little back and forth with AlgoLaser, they graciously said that they would send me not just the laser, but their entire safe kit. So that includes the smart enclosure, the honeycomb bed, the roller rotary and riser legs, the smart hub. So, you know, when you put all that together, it really kind of takes it to the next level compared to some of the machines I've looked at recently. And I have asked other manufacturers if they would be willing to send me at least an enclosure and a honeycomb bed. One wouldn't send me either. One sent me the honeycomb bed without the enclosure. Others have just said, no, we don't find that that's a necessity. I politely disagree with that. I actually find that this is a necessity. Having the enclosure is one of the things that makes open frame design diode lasers safe to use in a home-based environment that is maybe not as controlled as an industrial environment. So the fact that Algo said, yes, we will gladly send you that. I said, yeah, that's worth taking a look at. I think there's enough interesting about the machine, and the fact that you're interested in the safety of your consumers and the safety of the people who are, of the laser, that kind of, got enough of my interest to say, yep, let's absolutely take a look at this. So they sent me this machine free of charge. The opinions that I'm going to share are mine and mine alone. They do not have any say into what I review, and I'm going to give you what I feel is a fair and balanced look at the machine. There are a lot of things I like about the machine. There are a couple of things that I think could use some refinement on the machine, and then there's one in particular that I feel impacts the functionality of the machine that hopefully Algo will take this as some constructive criticism, but it's a direction I see a lot of other laser manufacturers heading as well, and I don't necessarily think that that's the answer, or if it is, then there's some things that they're going to have to do to make up for that. So we will talk about that a little bit later on. Initially, let's go ahead and get started with an unboxing and assembly video. The machine does come disassembled, and it took about 30 minutes start to finish to unbox, bolt everything together, get it to the point where it was ready for its first burn, and then set up the smart enclosure and the various accessories. So let's watch a quick time lapse of that, and we'll be right back. Okay, so now the machine's together. Now what? Let's talk about the assembly. I think the assembly process was relatively straightforward. There was a couple of, there's 3 bolts that go into each of the corners of the machine that bolt the 4 sides together, and then there's 2 bolts on the gantry that bolt it together. Really the hardest part was just making sure that the y-axis was set up properly, because there's a drive bar that connects the stepper motor off on one side to the belt on the other side. It's got belts down both sides to keep the gantry from racking. So there's a drive axle that connects between the two. So really that's the biggest trick, is making sure that that's nice and square. As long as that's square, everything else about the machine has been pretty easy in terms of putting it together. Your connectors are color coded and will only fit in certain areas. Your connectors for the laser, both here as well as underneath on the control panel, are fairly straightforward. Your air piping, again, fairly straightforward. So all around, it's a decent machine as far as, in terms of quality of assembly and what it looks like when it's finished. The wiring can get a little bit unruly as you deal with this little hub at the end of the gantry over here. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But there's a lot going on here on that axis. And then obviously you got a lot of wiring, especially if you're using the safe enclosure. That's all kind of congregating here to go out the one and only access port on the side. But that said, the wiring is well contained. As we look at it, the clips do keep everything out of the way. This is nowhere near where anything's being lasered. As the x-axis moves around, the excess here doesn't flop around and get in the way. So, kudos to that. It's nice and clean and well maintained. Okay, so the machine itself is pretty straightforward. It is a 400 millimeter by 400 millimeter diode laser, similar to many others on the market. Actual usable may vary from machine to machine, which is typical. Mine is actually 400 by 397 usable. Anything beyond that, it crashes. Some machines go a little bit over, some machines a little bit under. It just depends on assembly and where the home switches and stuff like that fall. Not a big deal. Expect that to be a little different from unit to unit. The honeycomb bed, you'll see as one of my projects, I made some indexing panels to keep the honeycomb indexed in the same place every time, so that when I use absolute coordinates, I have unknown reference point. So that's something you may want to consider. Otherwise, taking a look at the machine, all the ports are off on one side, so you've got a USB-C, which I really like. I'm thankful to all the manufacturers who have standardized on USB-C. You've got a USB-A port, which is for a thumb drive so that you can run jobs without being connected to the computer. You've got a DIN plug here for either the air supply or the smart hub, and then you've got a barrel jack for power. And then looking at the front of the machine, it has the control panel. Let me turn it on. So you've got a touchscreen control panel here, which allows you to control the laser without being connected to a computer. You've got a momentary push button switch that will turn the control panel on and off and turn on the laser. You've got a safety lock switch, so obviously you can disable the ability to turn the laser on and off without the key. And then you have an e-stop switch that thankfully gives me a nice visual and audible beep when it is pressed. That's the machine in a nutshell. Your air piping, it goes right through the laser head, so that's nice and contained. You don't have it down the side or blowing in, and when you look at underneath the laser, it's all contained so that it comes out the single nozzle here. So there's not a second nozzle that is cluttering this area up, which is good. I think that's about it for assembly. The trickiest part was, I think, on the smart enclosure, just deciding where the orientation of that fan is supposed to go. So if we look up there, that wire here comes out. You want that to come out the top right so that you can run it up and chase it along the same mounts as your LED light bar, and then down the side and out. That was that was the only thing that threw me for a loop and that I had to stop and figure out. Otherwise, the rest of it, as you saw in the video, was just pretty straightforward. We're ready to take a look at a couple of jobs that I ran. We're going to look at a couple of pen stands that I had to run for my F3 pens business. We're going to look at a Arctic 30-ounce tumbler that I did for my wife for her birthday. And then some odds and ends. We'll take a look at the cutting and the setup of the positioning jigs. We'll look at a couple of jobs that were run right from the control panel without using the computer. And we'll talk a little bit about the rotary setup and just general usage of the machine. And then we'll talk about some of the things I like and don't like. So stick around and we'll be right back. Okay, let's talk about the meat of the review. So, pros and cons. Pros, one of the best focusing mechanisms that I've seen so far from any of the manufacturers. So, the focus mechanism, let me find a workpiece here. And focusing is done via a cam lever. So you'll see one hand, flip the lever down, drop it down, flip the lever up, and we're focused. No muss, no fuss. So, just like that. Now, the cam can be adjusted tension-wise using this screw on the right here. And when I was doing the big tumbler, I had to mess with that a little bit because the laser head actually had to sit, high enough that it didn't get full clamp pressure on it. So I tightened up that set screw a little bit so that I could run my laser a little bit higher and still get a good grip on it. But you can see that the cam action, as I open and close that, spreads and clamps down on that dovetail there. So that, to me, is so much better than any of the thumb screw designs. Now, do I miss having a kickstand? Sure, having a kickstand would be nice. But, just that simple fact of having the cam lock there is fantastic. Love it. Other pros, the machine itself, unlike some of the others I've looked at recently, the cooling fan for the laser it comes on when the job runs. When the job's done, it runs for maybe 20-30 seconds and then shuts itself off, so that's great. It's not sitting there screaming in the background when it's not doing anything. All of your important bits are covered, so you've got your rollers covered here so that there's no chance of pinching. That's a nice thought. You've got the cover here for all of your junction work for the wiring and the controls for the X-axis stepper motors. What are some of the other things that I do like about it? I do like it is a beefy frame. I'm not worried about it being racked at all once it's set up and good. I would have no problems, abusing this thing on a daily basis for hours a day and worry that anything was going to vibrate itself apart or anything like that. So, as we, speaking of vibrating, it does have vibration detection. So if you crash the machine and it's over there vibrating away, it's going to stop. It's going to shut itself off. It's got tip, so if the machine tips more than probably 15 degrees or so, it'll shut itself off. It has flame detection. So the flame detection, if there's a flare up, it'll shut itself down. And then one of the big things that Algo has in the way that this controller is designed is it has power. What do they call it? Recovery after interruption. So if you're in the middle of a job and the machine loses power, as long as you don't move your workpiece, you can recover from that and pick up where you left off. So it'll give you the option on here to be able to basically restart your job or recover and return to where you last left off, and it'll pick up from right there and it'll keep running the job, so you don't lose any of the work that was done before that. So that's nice. Let's see. I was told that the controller in here, the geeky side of me, it's a dual core CPU, 32 gig of memory, which is actually pretty solid. I need to figure out how to actually transfer files to that, because 32 gig of built-in is nice. I should be able to send files to that and have them on the onboard storage to run offline as needed. Other than that, they do claim that you can upgrade the firmware online. So if you connect up the wireless to your home network, you can do a firmware update right through the machine. So that's nice. I haven't messed with that yet. I really haven't gotten into the firmware for any reason. It's working now, so why I'm not too worried about it. So that's a lot of the pros of this machine. Let's talk about a couple things that I don't like or that I think could use a little polishing up. The first is the air pump. The air pump on mine is finicky at best. It does typically come on when I tell it to turn on with a job. The problem comes when it's time to turn off. It doesn't turn off about 50% of the time. It'll finish the job, and instead of shutting off the air supply, it just runs nonstop. And the reason that that's a problem is because when I come over to turn it off with the hand control doesn't work. You'll notice, let's see if I pull the camera. So let's see if I can capture this. So, I can go up with it, but notice there, one push and it just kept going. Now, if I try to go down with it, sometimes it'll go down, but watch, if I take my finger back off, it was just going back up on its own. Now it's not going to do it, of course. Oh, there it went a second ago. So there, I'm pushing the down button and it's going up. So I can't, the pump doesn't. Okay, there I got it off. It's really finicky. So I don't know if that's, I assume that's a problem with the pump. Mine might just be a little faulty, but why it doesn't respond to G-code commands to turn itself off either, I don't know. Not worried about it. It's an air pump. It doesn't affect the performance. As long as it runs when I want it to run, I'm okay with that. I also do have shop air if I want to run shop air, or I've got multiple other pumps that I can hook up if it really starts to bother me. Next up is more of a cosmetic thing. This little hub that they've got at the end of the gantry. So I've seen this done on other machines, and I've seen it done a lot cleaner than this at the same price point. So, this is not affecting performance. It's not affecting reliability. It's just a cosmetic thing. I don't think it's a big deal. It's just, it could use a little bit of refinement. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. This guy. If you'll notice, I got a couple white marks on here. The fact that I had to do that, there's a usability issue with the module. The only viewing window is this small window right here. So this small window, which is also very, very dark, it's a very dark red or dark amber color. I understand why it's like that. I understand that it's a safety feature to make it so that there's minimal light escape from the laser. And maybe it's, maybe it is that some other countries require this to be a non-removable, fully enclosed device. The problem is, when you do that, you cannot frame. You can't rely on the built-in laser stack and the pinpoint precision of what your burning laser is for marking to frame your work and accurately position your materials. The reason being is because this is so dark, I had to crank up my percentage on my framing laser high enough that it was starting to actually mark the material. Typically I can get away with 1 to 2%, and that's bright enough to see through most viewing screens. You know, you look at something, you look at one of these from another manufacturer. It's a lighter window, so at 1 or 2% I can see the laser through there, but this is also acrylic that's designed just like these glasses are to block certain wavelengths of laser. So at that point you're safe, but it's also light enough that you can see through this. Now, because this is so dark, and the fact that there's only one window, there's nothing on this either of the sides, so if I'm on the side I can't judge position of the laser from the side, because, you know, again, no viewable window and it's so dark. So I would either love to see this as a removable piece, just like some of the others are doing. You know, just like this one here, it's magnetic, so it just magnets on and off. Or create me a wraparound window with the same laser safe, you know, wavelength blocking acrylic that wraps around this so that I can actually see my nozzle, and I can see the center of the nozzle, and I can see my framing dot, so that if I have to very specifically position work and frame it, I'm not fighting with that. So to work around that, I took a small square and I set this down and ran my square, you know, vertical like that, and gave myself a mark. And I did the same this way, gave myself a mark, and then I took an acrylic paint pen and ran those two markers there, so that especially when I was doing the tumbler, I needed that to know that I was properly aligned on the tumbler, since I couldn't see any kind of framing. It does help. It's a workaround. I would love to see a revision that offers a better way to do that. Now, if you have to stay with this design, give me a target laser that I can have a known offset, where I can set my target laser down, I can frame with my target laser, and then in LightBurn I can set that target laser offset so that when I burn the job, it accommodates the offset appropriately. So, you know, something really should be provided to either allow me to see that or give me a target laser on the side. So that's my biggest complaint, and that's really probably my only complaint from a functionality perspective. Actually, when it comes to burning jobs, it's fantastic. It does what a 20-watt laser should. It's not one of these, oh, 20 watts equals 40 watts, or 40 watts equals 100 watts. I mean, that's like paper towel and toilet paper math. 4 rolls equals 18. 20 watts is 20 watts. That's what I want, and that's a good thing, because that means I can take work that I've previously configured for other 20-watt lasers, bring it to this machine, and be within a couple of % of being able to utilize this machine without having to go back to my file and make adjustments. So if my cut parameters on 5mm plywood is 350 millimeters a second at 100%, I know that I can take that from machine to machine to machine and not worry about it. If I bring that to a machine that, oh, our 20-watt laser is as powerful as a 40-watt laser, it's going to blast through my wood, my kerf's going to be too big. So thank you for, you know, to AlgoLaser, as well as the others, that when I buy a 20-watt laser, I get a 20-watt laser, not some magic math. So that's a good thing. You know, performance-wise, engraving, it does okay. I only try to do image engraving based off of the onboard controller with nothing kind of pre-processed. I just grab some bas relief images and an SVG, and, you know, dropped them in there to run from the control board. They did okay. I mean, they're not fantastic, but they're not horrible. I mean, they're unprocessed images. Now, the vector one, the SVG, the onboard only lets you do line. It'll only do trace for an SVG. It won't do a fill. So I can't engrave this as if it were an image without using the computer. So if I go to LightBurn, I can set this to a fill layer, and it'll you know, go back and forth just like an image, and it'll fill that in. When I use the onboard control panel, the only option I have is for what they're calling vector, which is basically just a trace or a line operation. So just know that if you want to do filled vectors, you still have to use your computer for that. Otherwise, I think that about covers it. You know, I'm not going to run material test grids because, you know, based on what I'm seeing, it's performing very similar to others. You know, you can watch some of the other reviews and the material tests that are out there. Might it cut 1 or 2 squares more or 1 or 2 squares less than some of its competition? Sure, but at the end of the day, I don't think that's what's important. I think what's important is the build quality of the machine, the cut quality of the machine, the features of being able to use the machine to run your jobs. I think those are the most important factors, not necessarily, oh, this one cuts 1 more square up on my test pattern. Now, obviously, if you're new to it and you don't know a material, run your test patterns. You know, if you don't have settings in a library in place and you're using a material before you do a production job on something, yeah, run your test pattern, find your perfect settings. From a review perspective, that's not helpful to you guys because that is going to be very specific to your machine, your environment, your material. So me running a test pattern doesn't necessarily help you to do the job on your end. So that's why I'm not doing that. The last thing I really have to talk about this machine from an accessory perspective is the rotary. We touched base on the Smart Hub. The Smart Hub allows me to control the air pump and the lights and everything from G-code. We talked about the honeycomb bed that, you know, it's a 400 by 400 honeycomb bed. We may not have talked about it, but we just did. Talked about the smart enclosure. So the last thing to talk about is the rotary. Now, the rotary is an interesting animal. I happen to really like, for a roller rotary, I happen to really like this one. It is very solid. It is very robust. It's as clean as I would like to see the machine be. You know, there's not extraneous noise on this. It's a very durable, very solid unit. There's your integrated port, so you get multiple cables that allow you to hook up to the different machines, whether it's the Alpha or the Delta or the DIY or any of the other machines. From a design perspective, everything is toolless, which is fantastic. It's thumb screws on the sides that allow me to back out the thumb screws and adjust my roller wider or narrower. And then when I get it set in place, there's a nice little thumb wheel here that allows me to adjust the belt tension. Because as you move this in and out, your belt tensioning is going to change pretty heavily. So being able to adjust the belt tension and adjust the position with no tools is awesome. 20 millimeter rollers, they're nice and sticky, so they do a really good job on tumblers, on small pieces if you're doing pens, you know, any small round objects. It's really grippy, so that's good. And it also comes with the tail support. So on the bottom of the rotary, there's these little nubs here, and there's matching holes in. So if you can see that, there's matching holes in there. So what this does is when you place this on your work surface, everything holds it together. You know, gravity basically holds it in place. So you find the right setting for where you need those to be in line with your rollers. And you can either set it up far or you can set it up close. There's 2 sets of holes, but when you have it set, then you can adjust your height using, again, toolless thumb screws. And you can dial the taper out of your tumbler or your wine glass or whatever it is that you're working on. So it's nice to have that, you know, as an included, and you can do both left side and right side. So depending on what orientation you want your work to be in, you have that capability. Now, setting up the rotary with the Alpha Mk2 was a bit of a journey. Watch this video. I'm going to put a card in here, or if I can't get the card in there, look at the link down in the description. There's a video that I created for how to use the AlgoLaser rotary with the Alpha Mk2. Their instruction manual will get you about halfway there. It's missing a few steps that are pretty important. Not just how to hook it up physically, but how to configure, in this case, LightBurn, to utilize the rotary and actually get a job done start to finish. So watch that video, and that's a little bit outside the scope of what we're talking about here, but just know that the rotor is the rotary's great. I really do think for a non-chuck style rotary, for a roller rotary, I'm enjoying this. And again, it does come with the risers. There's 4 riser legs here, so you take off the rubber feet from the bottom, you put the rubber feet back in here, and then screw the whole assembly up onto the bottom of the machine. They're a little short for, they're great for like 20-ounce tumblers, but when I was working on the 30-ounce, they were a little too short, so I had to raise it up with some blocks of wood. So I put the riser legs up, and then I put a couple pieces of 3/4 inch or what is that, 18 millimeter plywood underneath to raise it up just enough so that I could clear the focus and clear the laser over the larger tumbler. But otherwise, you know, they did the job. They lifted the machine up, and when the machine's lifted, again, you have much easier access to a lot of the controls and everything like that. So I think that about covers it. Would I recommend buying this machine? Yeah. You know, obviously, you don't have to take my word for it. Do your research, watch other reviews, watch some of the other channels that are out there that talk about this machine. You know, look at its competition at the price point. This is a $700 machine. With the enclosure and all the smart kit, it's pushing $1,000 US. It's not small change, and it's definitely putting it in competition with some of the, you're getting close to the price point of some of the fully enclosed, like Class 1 lasers that are out there these days. You know, so obviously, you know, take that into consideration and do your research. I think the machine is very robust. I think it's a quality machine that's going to last in the shop. Fix a couple of those quality control issues, and I might work with Algo to see if I can get a replacement for the air pump. But, you know, it's not critical. It's not important, as I do have alternatives. But, you know, if you're looking to buy one of these, definitely, you know, help me out a little bit. Down in the links below, there's going to be an affiliate link to take you to AlgoLaser's website. There's discount codes that you can use to get a little bit of money off. You know, right now they gave me a list of discounts for several of the machines, and I think some of the accessories. So if you are interested in buying this, obviously, you know, please use my affiliate link, because it helps me to continue to bring you content, not just review content, but tutorials. The meat of this channel is the tutorials. It's the tutorials for LightBurn. It's the tutorials for cutting projects and design ideas. You know, at some point I'll be branching out into my CNC and potentially MillMage as that hits the market. And you know, just other maker and tinker type tools. So, you know, if you like that content and you're looking to buy one of these, help me out a little bit. Use the affiliate link below. Absolutely subscribe to the channel, please. Looking at statistics, only a small percentage of people who are subscribed to my channel are, you know, only a small percentage of the people watching this are subscribed to my channel. So please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification icon so you know when I drop new content. You don't necessarily have to watch all the reviews, but because I am posting quite a bit of quality content with software and other you know, things within this makerspace, maybe there'll be something else that'll be, you know, of interest to you. So thanks, guys. I think that takes care of it. And until next time, we will talk to you later.